For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Langford. I'm the Director of Voice Projects. A little bit of background to who we are. Our core purpose is improving organisations by giving people a voice. And we've given a voice to over 1 million people across 3,000 organisations, so we're quite proud of the impact that we're having around the world. The primary reason why we're here this morning is because of the Change Challenge Awards that we started up 3 years ago. But we wanted an award that recognised improvements in performance, not just high performers. So in a sense, that's how we see the Change Challenge Awards being quite unique. It's designed to recognise and indeed learn from these changes and very impressive change journeys that organisations have gone through. Without further delay, I will invite Michael Miller, who's the CEO of Downer Rail, to come up and present their change story. Thank you.
But look, we are delighted to win this award. It's a great fillip for the organisation that has gone through a significant number of challenges in the last 4 to 5 years. It's credit to everybody in the organisation, both people who have left us and people who are in the organisation today and continuing to drive towards our customers. So delighted with the help we've had from Voice Project to be able to enable us to hear the messages from our people, because I think it's as much about that as it is about the messages that they're able to actually send to us, and obviously this process has worked extremely well for the organisation, and it's one that, you know, I feel privileged to be able to represent the team and accept the award, because I think it belongs more to anybody who is actually frontline employee of the business, all of their management teams, all the way through the organisational structure. This change process for us feels like a marathon, and I think this is an ongoing process, so we look forward to kind of continuing this journey. Just a little bit about Downer and Downer Rail for a bit of context, and I'll be pretty quick on this. We've got 19,000 people work for Downer. We're a $7 billion business. Downer Rail has about $700 million worth of revenues and 1,400 odd people today. So we are a relatively small part of the organisation. Arguably a thought leader inside the organisation, because we can become a test bed for some of the initiatives that the organisation really wants to test with its people and its customers. And we feel quite privileged in our role in the organisation to be able to be that test bed. But equally, what we kind of see is a great opportunity for the rail business, given a lot of significant movement that's taking place, particularly in the passenger market right now, to be a growth engine for Downer going forward. There are a number of large-scale public sector infrastructure projects taking place all around the country. We're participating in all of those at fairly substantial expense, and it's critical for us to be business fit to do that, and these projects have been about getting us to that point in time. So we see this as a great opportunity for growth for Downer and certainly for the rail business. Why did we do this? There was a kind of perfect storm in a kind of ugly way that took place over the last 3 or 4 years, and I'll be pretty quick on these points, but substantial change in our business model, coming off the back of a major project that was completing, so the Waratah train project, which you probably know a little bit about, and hopefully you ride the train, it's a great train, and therefore a change to the processes that we needed to put in place to be more meaningful for our customers going forward. So over the period from 13, back into 13 through to December 14, when we ran the first voice survey, we'd lost essentially 40% of our team. We'd gone from a 2,500 person organisation to a 1,500 person organisation. So a 1,000 person reduction out of 2,400. Substantial change. Our response to that was, we really need to understand how we're going to ensure we've got the appropriate engagement from our people. This is a business that had been operating in a variety of ways for up to 150 years. We had great loyalty with people that were not necessarily impacted because we had constant growth in that business over the last 15 to 20 years, and suddenly we're confronted with a fairly major challenge. Our view was pretty clearly that we wanted to be able to hear directly from our workforce about how they were feeling. So we were delighted to engage in this process and run our first survey in December 14. We were more delighted with the outcome, and more particularly the outcome that we were most pleased with wasn't the engagement score. It was about the specific detail that came from the various elements of the engagement score, but more particularly it was about the participation. Because the participation, given the change we'd gone through, was a signal to us that we had a whole bunch of people who cared. 55% of the people in the organisation that had gone through major change wanted to tell us how they were feeling. And they told us. And we didn't necessarily like the answers, but it was the only way, by listening was the only way we were going to actually be able to untap the potential that existed in the organisation through those people for the next part of the journey. So, we ran a series of processes, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but ultimately we ended up with 4 critical areas that we decided that should be our focus for the next phase of change for the organisation. We scored pretty poorly in these areas, and we felt that given the criticality of what we were trying to do next, these were the things that were going to have the most dramatic impact on the business outcome. So our view, engaged people drive business outcome. The people at the, let's call them the bottom of the house, the guys that are working in the depots turning the tools, they are our revenue generators, and so we've got to get the messages all the way through the organisation. And that in most cases, as we ran the survey results across those demographies, the further we got from the executive team, the less clear strategy was to the people in the business, and therefore the less engaged those people were. So we were all about making sure we got direct connectivity all the way through the organisation. And so the feedback was cross-unit cooperation, so classic matrix organisation, was an area we needed to work on. We didn't work well when we were inside and needed to rely on the matrix. The organisational direction wasn't clear. People couldn't understand necessarily how their role contributed to strategy, or in fact didn't understand what strategy was. And in some cases, I think even at senior levels, we were confused about what our strategy was. We need to do some work about our learning and development at all levels. Technical training all the way through to leadership. And then the leadership team itself was a challenge. Were we demonstrating the appropriate leadership to the organisation? The organisation's leadership team had changed dramatically over the previous 5 years. I think I stand here today as the 4th chief executive of the rail business in the last 5. So there was some great feedback we got across those categories, and they were the categories that we chose to focus on. The process we used was that we took all of the feedback and we did a fair bit of analytics with both our HR team and with the executive team initially to look at the results and try and understand them. But our view was that we really needed to kind of dive deeper. Some of the data was great data, but didn't necessarily unlock all of the really critical things for the organisation. And so we had a reasonably mature process around identification of talent, and so we used the talent inside the organisation to form some teams to revalidate the feedback that we were getting from the survey. So we put in place focus groups, essentially, led by talent, not led by the executive team, driven by the executive team, but owned by the business and owned by the talent in the business to be able to go back to the workforce and just ensure that we understood what we were being told. And from there, we made some decisions about how we were going to try and influence the 3 or 4 things, how we were going to get focused on the most critical things that could have the most dramatic impact on the business. The things that were going to engage the people most specifically to be able to ensure that we were focused on the critical things inside the business. And that process worked pretty well. It did help us get to the point where we were dealing with the wildly important, the top 4 things. And there's a theme in a lot of the stuff that's changed inside our business, and that is that we are trying now more than ever to be focused, and we will constantly refer to things inside the business as the wildly important goals. We will focus on the wildly important. There's plenty of things we could focus on, but we need to get to the nub of the things that are going to have the most dramatic impact on our people, our customers, our strategy. So the process worked well. What did we do around these 4 things? So I'll spend a little bit more time to talk about these 4 things. And I want to start with the cross-unit cooperation, because in the same way that we put in place talent to be able to get feedback around the survey itself, what we then chose to do with respect to improving our working relationships inside the business, removing the barriers that existed between business units, if you like, and functions, how to ensure that we all had common goal and purpose, was using the same process. For us, it was about making sure that we identified a number of projects, and there were 9 inside our business that were critical for our success, and we put in place cross-functional teams led by, again, talent, to be able to actually work through how we were going to address those problems. And one of those problems was that we had a long-standing relationship with a critical customer, Pacific National, and we had traditionally had in a growth market, a pretty lazy contract mechanism in place with Pacific National, and both ourselves and Pacific National had a requirement for change. They were competing in a more aggressive market. They needed the supply chain and organisations like Downer to support them more effectively, and they were looking for change. And so we put a team in place to be able to work with Pacific National and work internally to be able to propose a more appropriate contract mechanism, term, solution for that customer. So that was the way we worked these programs, and we had a variety of groups. It wasn't a technically led, or it wasn't a solution commercial-led team. It was a genuine cross-functional team that focused on that project and focused on 8 others that were like-minded projects. Those teams were led directly back to the executive team as a group, so that we were able to help influence, remove the barriers, etc., around those programs. And we're delighted with the outcomes that came from that focus. It clearly helped the organisation understand more clearly what the goals were and how we needed to work together to be able to achieve those goals. From an organisational direction perspective, it was evident from the feedback from the survey that we didn't have direct alignment all the way through the organisation about the relevance of everybody's individual role against the strategy. We've implemented the 4 disciplines of execution, which is a kind of a Franklin Covey product. And again, I'm not kind of paid advertisements here for these products, but it was worked very effectively for us in terms of getting great strategic alignment all the way through the organisation. We drove that wars and battles process, with, the 40X process, with great rigour and discipline inside the business, and it was clear that that's helped us get clarity around what it is we're about and how we could get that all the way through the organisation. We had a real focus on learning and development, and again, won't go into a huge amount of detail, but all levels. Leadership development programs, all the way through to technical training, but more particularly management training programs. Things that you kind of gloss over a little bit, focus on leadership, focus on technical training, but there's a lot of guys that have emerged through the business that have got to where they've got to because of an expertise around their particular area, but don't necessarily have the balanced skills between the other things that are important: safety, people, financial capability, customer. They're production blokes. They're great production blokes, but they don't have the skills to necessarily lead their team. Big focus on that for us. And then leadership was really all about visible, open, transparent messaging to the team. And not me, but all of my team and all of their team. You know, our view was 7 guys influencing 30 direct reports is one thing, but those 30 direct reports with common messaging, visible leadership to influence 230, and for that 230 to touch the 1,400 people in the organisation was what it was going to be all about. And be there and tell the story direct. Not just send out the external comps, that was great, worked great for us, but front the workforce, have the open conversation. As bad as it was, and as tough as the decisions were and the business environment was, the guys respond to the honesty that comes from a direct conversation, the courage to be able to tell these guys the truth. Work through it together. And that's what we did. From an outcome perspective, great results. We won this deal with Pacific National, $1 billion deal over 10 years, transforming the way in which we operate in that marketplace. Our total recordable safety rate is in new territory. You know, sub 4, we've never been anywhere near sub 4. 5 years ago, we were in the kind of 10 to 15 range. We stagnated around 6, 5 to 6, sub 4. Our utilisation inside depots, our productivity, if you like, is up from 62% to 77%. Our employee turnover is down from 17 to 10. So a number of outstanding results, you know, validating this idea that, you know, if everybody can kind of align to strategy and you've got an engaged workforce, then by definition the business performance will improve. We resurveyed 9 months later. Why 9 months later? The organisation was so impressed with the way in which the engagement had improved inside its laggard business, right, the rail business, that the organisation took on the challenge of running voice across the 19,000 employees in August 2015. And so 9 months later we did a survey, probably not our choice, but we obviously played. We had 25 to 50% improvement in all of those 4 measures. Significant improvement in those scores. Some way to go, clearly, but improvement in all of those measures. But not just those measures, and probably not entirely to our surprise, but by being focused on the things that were, you know, widely important, we got a lot of the other things right as well, and we had significant improvement in virtually all areas of the survey. Significantly improved engagement with all of our people. So learnings for us. Focus is absolutely critical. Our view on this is pretty clear, is you kind of law of diminishing returns kind of place. You try and do too much, you achieve very little. So focus on the wildly important. But in doing that, take enough time to understand and not just jump straight into task. You know, we had a reasonable period of time with the consultation and with the leadership of the talent to ensure that we got the right things on our radar. That enabled us to be able to get ownership and accountability all the way through the business. So the team at the top of the house, driving but not owning, holding people accountable, and getting real engagement from all of the people that were line management. This is their result. It's helped them all to develop personally, and it's helped them get better relationships with their workforce. It's a great credit to the whole organisation, the way that was kind of rolled out. And absolutely critical for us was to focus on the things that had the most dramatic impact on the business strategy. Really try and get strong alignment against business strategy for everything that we were doing.
Thank you very much.